Hey, welcome to Thoughts on Talks
Hi there.
with Reverend Mike McMorrow, and
That's me.
and I'm Malayna Dawn. Just
That's her.
in case you can't tell us apart. Yeah. So we're here to talk about yesterday's Sunday service, which was April 26th, and it was a good talk and very interesting and full of great info and fairly lively chats in the chat room as we watched on YouTube from all of our respective homes. Actually, I think the chat quieted down because now we've gotten used to it,
Uh-huh.
and people are less enamored with saying hi to each other and like refocusing back on
Oh, it's them.
on the screen. But there's still plenty of interaction going on, which is nice. So the topic was fire in the belly.
Really? Yeah.
Fire. And then there was a great quote on the slides. Do you have the slides? You want to show it?
Sure.
I mean,
You didn't get your screen share thing? I mean, your whatever you call it?
mine? No, I haven't yet. I emailed myself and it hasn't arrived yet.
Okay.
So,
You want this one?
oh, the pajama party one was cute. It's
Yeah.
long, actually.
That was the seventh Sunday we've been doing this stuff, man. That blows my mind.
Yeah, we never thought it would be so long, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little longer. Yes, I liked this theme, and as you pointed out, Reverend Nancy's creative thought was perfectly in alignment with this, although she hadn't looked at the notes. It was just kind of following spirit. And I love that this also aligns perfectly with Ramadan and the deeper meaning behind why the Islamic faith and people of Islamic faith, Muslims, um, take the month or so to fast during the daylight hours. And it's
And you should tell folks that you have a connection with Islam that most folks do not.
I do. It's actually a pretty loose connection.
Yeah.
I mean, my father was raised Muslim, but he's also a very Western thinker. He was raised in British ruled Sri Lanka. So being a Westerner, I think in a lot of ways seemed cooler to him, certainly, and to many. So he doesn't practice as rigidly as the rest of his family does, I've found. The rest of his family who still live in Sri Lanka do observe Ramadan. And when I lived there and when I have visited there, you were talking about trying to fast during the day and finding it challenging. And they don't act like normal daily life is going on. They kind of take it down a notch and they spend more time being mellow and taking things a little more slowly and conserving their energy, because it is also a time of turning inward and connecting to spirit. So, when I was there visiting, they would try to keep going out and doing, big celebratory things or big daytime outings to a minimum because it just wasn't in keeping with the mood and the feeling of
So there's a solemnity to it.
Yeah.
So is there a solemnity within the country of Sri Lanka, would you say?
No, because the Muslims are only about 7% of the population.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very small group, but they are a community. So that's the other thing is they've all grown up learning how to discipline themselves in this way. throughout their lives, and they have the support of everybody in their household, everybody in their community. And so it's a discipline they've developed over their entire lives. And if you're extremely ill, you're not supposed to fast. If you, have health challenges, and even one of my cousins who's an airline pilot, there's some flexibility, like when he chooses based on what time zone he's flying over.
Right.
He wants to stick with the home time zone or pick a different sunset, because it's from sunrise to sunset. So they get up very early in the morning while it's still dark and have a good hearty breakfast, and then watch for the time of sunset to break the fast. And that's something that they gather together. It starts with maybe some like oatmeal type thing. It's a salty, savory dish, but and some dates, so a little sweetness. And then after they digest that, then they'll have maybe a bigger feast that carries on later into the night than would normally. So it's just a real shift, not just of eating habits, but of schedule and energy and prayer. So it's.
I wonder if, so in the Catholic tradition and other Christian traditions, I don't know if it's done exactly the same way in the Anglican or Lutheran churches, but when a child receives their first communion,
Mm-hmm.
right, so the first time they receive the Eucharist, they're 7 or 8, I think 8. And of course, you go to these, I was in Catholic school, so you're going to Catholic school and you're preparing, or you go to catechism and you prepare. Okay. So there's this excitement. And I wonder if, because I know that children are excluded from fasting, but I wonder as a child gets to be a particular age, if it's a thing where they get to fast.
I'm not sure, because I wasn't really clear on it, because my father being here kind of separated from his community. He never practiced it because the rest of us didn't practice Islam. So he might have done his own thing in his own way that I never observed. Yeah. But so I didn't really learn much about it until I was in my 20s, like mid to late 20s, and had a chance to visit there. And because it's on the Islamic calendar, it moves around throughout the year. So it's not always in April. It's not always even during a time of scorching heat, as you pointed out that the name Ramadan means. Sometimes it's in December, because it rotates through our Western calendar.
Right.
And so it just happened. It was another time when it was in April and I had spring break off and I wanted to visit. And they said, oh, now is not really the best time. It's Ramadan and we're fasting. And I didn't really understand what that meant. So I said, well, how does that affect my visit? And they said, well, we're not going to really have the energy to take you around or to, do things. And that's when because at first it was like, oh, okay, so you're not going to be eating during the day, but I can find ways to eat and not disturb you, but there's so much more involved in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they have a Sri Donald's in Sri Lanka?
There are McDonald's, a couple of them, and
the Burger Royale.
They have different offerings. Like they do have a veggie burger now, I think. They call hamburgers beef burgers because they don't want people thinking ham is in it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, but I don't.
In other words, they managed to get everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, they have a lot of the fast food chains there now. Not all of them.
So what did you think about my my fashion predictions?
About wearing masks that match your outfits.
Yeah.
I think I've already seen some of those. They were joking versions. They weren't real like Paris Fashion Week versions. But I have thought about with the whole mask, and you know, I've thought about like, what if somebody coughs and it gets in my hair? Maybe I should wrap my head like a Muslim woman would, and cover my face and cover my hair and just, you know, be a little bit more protected.
Well, check this one out.
Mm-hmm.
So on my way to church yesterday, I had NPR on and I was listening,
Mm-hmm.
and they had you know, it's like a news magazine on Sunday mornings, and they were talking about people using nylon hose to help strengthen the mask.
Yeah.
So you cut a section out of the leg about 8 to 10 inches, and then you pull it over your head and it pulls the mask in, and it increases the effectiveness, they say, almost as high as a surgical mask.
Yeah, I read something about that too, that if you have a layer of cotton and a layer of nylon, the cotton is good for some things, and then the nylon is almost like you know, one of those magnetic things that grabs the smaller fibers.
Oh yeah, because it would have static electricity.
Yes.
Yeah, and it would also lock in heat, so I'm sure it's really comfortable.
Yeah, and on a hot day like we've been having.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't know that pantyhose was even a thing anymore.
I don't think it is in the same way that it once was, where it was like sort of expected for all females.
They were in those eggs.
Right, legs. It's L apostrophe, egg.
Yeah, that was brilliant marketing.
Yes. Well, and it's just one of those strange cultural things. If you think about how weird it is to have women showing their legs, but having to have them covered in some way, and then pretending they're not covered by using nylon, and then having it be like expected, almost a uniform. And actually for like work attire, it was an expected uniform.
Sure. It was probably a man who made the rule.
Yeah.
A real businessman.
And then when you go back to marketing, so many things come from somebody thinking, how do we get rid of all this excess stuff? It could be used to wrap women's legs. Let's market it as legs in an egg. And then it becomes a thing.
Yeah, let's make them Lex.
For our next.
Lenex.
Right. It's
Nexel. Anyway,
we'll work on it. We'll get a marketing meeting together, but I noticed that Nancy seems to coordinate. Reverend Nancy, she has a red mask, and it looks like she's wearing red.
Yes,
that's always impressive.
Yes, Stephanie makes a very high-grade mask, and she made her a couple.
Oh,
and so,
yeah. So.
Somebody donated some nice prints, and she's been making masks that have prints. So
nice.
She's getting to be very artista.
I've also read that it has been requested that people use printed fabrics rather than solid colors, so that people can see that it's a homemade mask and won't mistake it for a medical mask. Of course, if it's not white or blue, they're probably not going to mistake it for a medical grade mask, but prints, maybe they just
the last thing you want to see, you know, when your anesthesiologist is putting you under is a homemade mask.
Yeah, duckies and bunnies or something like that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So so the mask and the matching outfits, and then the my prediction for hair.
Please show that slide right now.
Yeah.
We gotta show it. There you go.
Buren look.
Okay, there was some chat about that. Mine was history jokes. And then Binu said, ha ha ha, just because you can't hear us doesn't mean we're not laughing.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the chuckles aren't there, is actually what she
Well,
said.
he's also got those big sideburns of the day.
Yes. So you need to work on that. If that's the look you're going for. It kind of looks like Doc Brown.
He was only like 5'4", 5'6", something like that. He's a very short guy.
Maybe that's why he had to make himself look bigger. Yeah. Like in nature, when like birds or apes or different, to puff themselves up to look more.
Well, I guess now that I'm doing a side by side, maybe I won't be doing the Van Buren.
Oh, well, thank you.
or the Marty.
Yeah, I don't think it's really a thing. And it looks like hard work too. You have to get gel and start training it. Some wax like people do.
I actually had the sideburns like that in my senior portrait when I graduated from high school.
We need to see your senior portrait. Do you have it framed on your mantle? Can you grab it right now?
No, it's at my mom's house.
Oh.
I don't even think I have a copy of it.
How's your mom doing? Is it okay to ask that while we're broadcasting?
Well, she could use prayer. So, my mom's facing a health challenge for anyone out there listening, the two of you who actually watch this.
There might be up to 4.
Yeah. So if you remember my mom, Kathleen, in your prayers for, radiant good health, that would be awesome.
Very good. And we're continuing the Power of 8 prayer groups, which, when it was your week, that was part of your request, was to remember your mom.
It was very self-serving.
Well, it was your turn.
Yes.
But
and
you did all.
This photograph that I have posted here is in O'Melveny Park, and this section has been shut off from the public since like April.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the first week in April. So
did you sneak in, or did they open it?
No, this is an older photograph I had from like 2 months ago.
Okay. Back in the olden days when we could just wander around wherever we wanted.
Yeah, and we just had a rain, and so this creek doesn't, is often dry. And, anyway, it's just something local and picturesque, and I miss not being able to get up there. Because, it's, walking's better than non-walking, but, walking flat, and, we have a nice neighborhood, but, it's flat and it's paved and it's not nature. So
yeah, it's a different vibe. I saw a post from a friend who lives in, I think, the Redondo Beach area, and she said they have either a botanical garden or some kind of local park where you can sign up online to get an appointment so that they can let you walk around and know that there aren't going to be many people there. So she and her husband have gone a couple of times, and they said they didn't see anybody the whole time they were there, but they still wore their masks and but got to be out in nature. So maybe we should all look into that and see if any of our local parks are doing something like that.
Well, I imagine Descanso is.
Yeah, maybe.
It would be because, they can kind of, they have an entrance. They can control who's in and out. O'Melveny or Griffith Park, it'd be much more difficult. Right. Yeah.
So we're learning to appreciate our neighborhoods and our own backyards and our front yards. If we're lucky enough to have them, not everybody has houses with yards. Some have apartments with balconies.
Yeah, well, that's why I've been, doing my my midday reset. Has often been in the backyard, in the garden.
Yeah, which is lovely.
Well, and it's been interesting to see it through the eye of the camera also.
Yeah.
So, there's all these little places that when you're within the frame, not that the whole thing together isn't great, but when I start noticing all the features, you know, Stephanie's put a lot of work into it, and it looks great back there.
It does.
And things are blooming, and you know.
Yeah, when you can choose a little corner and zoom in, or I've seen you do some creative, like from behind the red flower, like decorative accents, and you know, closing in on St. Francis of Assisi statue and then zooming out. I mean, all of that gives you a different perspective on
Sure.
what you already have. So
Right.
we can all do that.
Well, of course, Francis is my patron saint. That's my baptismal name.
Ah.
And it was the name of my grandfather. So.
Lovely. I've always been a fan of St. Francis of Assisi.
Yeah.
Because of his love for animals. He's often seen with statues with birds on him and, you know, squirrels and stuff all around his feet. There's also a prayer that I've heard in song of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon.
We used to do, make me a channel of your peace.
Keep going.
There is despair in life, let me bring hope.
Come on, are there more hand movements though?
No, I forgot them. In fact, I don't even think that's the next line. But yeah, it's yeah. So that's how the nuns taught us the prayer of St. Francis. So that was a big thing within my own family, is what I'm getting. So, anyways.
So that's why he's in your garden, to continue to.
No, Stephanie actually found, there's actually two of them. The two Franks have been there since before me.
Wow.
Yes.
Maybe she like called you to her with her statues.
Yeah,
her statue choices.
Yeah, maybe. She can blame it on them. So what else did I talk about yesterday?
Oh, so many things. Let's see. What else did I take screenshots of? So I went back and took screenshots with the captioning on it. So let me see if I could find a good one. The idea of practicing our spiritual practice on days when we don't feel like it.
Oh yeah.
That deeper commitment, and how we can apply that to exercise as well. But it's just, I mean, you were talking about the power of 8, how even though people express frustration with the way it worked out on the first round, most people signed up for the second round and were willing to, you know, make some adjustments and keep at the practice. So,
and that it counts double.
That's what we should tell ourselves when we exercise a little bit and keep a commitment. We should give ourselves extra points.
Right.
Because
that second scoop of ice cream.
it's a commitment as well, and you know, it's a challenge. So if it were easy, everybody would do it. If it were, you know, it's one of the things about Ramadan too, is it's a sense of sacrifice, that you're putting yourself in a little bit of discomfort for greater revelations that come out of it. So these are helpful things.
Yeah.
So let's see, what else do I have? Maybe, one of the things that occurred to me that I just thought was kind of a funny connection is in Sinhalese, which is the national language of Sri Lanka,
yes.
The word for hunger is badagini, which means stomach fire.
Bada bing?
Badagini, G-I-N-I. Bada is stomach, B-A-D-A. And gini, G-I-N-I, is fire. So when you say you're hungry, your badagini.
Yeah.
And so with fire in the belly and
Badagini.
hunger and Ramadan, which is fasting, it all kind of tied together in a
Seems
funny.
like a Westerner should be able to take that word and do something with it, like in a rap song or something.
It's
Badagini.
one of my favorite words that I learned because it is so expressive and it's fun to say. So it's, I don't remember a lot of Sinhalese because I don't use it anymore.
Well, I got some badagini going on right now.
So you want to wrap this up is what you're saying so you could have a snack?
No, I don't know how they do all day. You know, I get that they start with a nice big meal, and I'm sure that helps.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, what is it, about 3 or 4 right now? And it's probably another 4 hours to sundown, or 3.5 anyway.
Yeah, it's probably around 7:30. They
I
made
wonder if people get snarky, like starting around 6 o'clock.
well, yeah, and I remember when I was working in Sri Lanka too in a big office, you can kind of tell what community people are from, what religion they probably practice by people's last names there. It's pretty easy and everybody kind of knows. So because my father's last name is a Muslim last name, they would assume that I was going to not go to lunch and say, oh, well, you're not going to lunch. Well, here's some stuff. Can you take care of this for me while we all go to lunch? And I was like, that's my dad's last name. I was not raised Muslim. I'm coming to lunch with you.
Yeah, right.
But you could see how that kind of assumption could make people grumpy.
Right, right.
Yeah, it makes you also distracted if you're focusing on work instead of going to eat. But you don't have to work. You can go and sit with people. It's just a little harder. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I tip my hat to them.
Yeah. It's like Lent, but you're not just giving up one thing. You're giving up all food and drink for a big portion of every day for a while.
Right.
But you get to eat better. So it's delayed gratification.
Well, I got high marks from Salam.
Oh, good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because he's a practicing Muslim.
Yes, he is a practicing Muslim.
Yeah, and I am not. I've just learned things along the way, and mostly from living in a country where it's being practiced around me.
Well, I thought it was a good time to, like, for instance, the 5 pillars of Islam.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good time for us to learn, you know, they're basic things. I didn't go into depth on anything because I don't feel qualified to speak to it.
Yeah. But
most Westerners in New Thought are familiar with Rumi, who is a Sufi.
So
but Sufism is different from traditional Islam. So, and then, you know, it's interesting how, you know, every religion has its schisms or schisms, whatever the word is.
Yeah. Well, there's always a mystic branch, and there's always a follow the letter of the law branch, and then there's, you know.
Well, then you have the Shia and Sunni thing.
Right.
Which is a pretty serious distinction within, you know, the Islamic faith. So,
yeah. Think about all the different groups there are within Christianity.
I know. Look at how many Protestant denominations there are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway.
People just looking for stuff to believe and follow.
Well, so for when I was a kid, just sticking with that point for a moment, I knew there was a Greek Orthodox church, but I just thought those were the only 2 Catholic churches. We were taught that, you know, if you got in a jam, you could go to a Greek Orthodox church. But I understand their church services are a lot longer than the Roman church. So that's one thing to know. But then I learned, actually it was when I was in ministerial school, there are all kinds of Catholics.
Yeah.
Coptics, which is actually the oldest Catholic church, the African church.
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you have Russian Orthodox, Armenian, Syrian, another old branch of Catholicism.
Yes.
So really the Roman Church is the newbie. Now, of course, they got, because of the Roman Empire,
Right.
you know, they got, you know.
Some powerful backing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's all pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna talk about the musician, our guest musician on Sunday, John Silvers.
Yes.
And his Falling Upward song.
Yeah.
I went back and took a video from my phone of, you know, playing it on my TV and uploaded it to YouTube. And I added a little film filter, so there's some movement on the sides.
Uh-huh.
And maybe
John appreciated that.
Huh?
I'm sure John appreciated that.
I remember looking him up previously when he came to the center to try to find his social media or something, and I couldn't find anything. So if you have anything, let me know.
Yeah, well, if it's not him, then Wendy, his wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because John Silver and Silvers are kind of common names, and then Long John Silver comes up, and, you know, so to just Google that was challenging to find anything. But, you know, maybe we could also connect that to Reverend Richard Rohr, because when I Googled Falling Upward to see if he already had a music video up for it, I came across the book that you mentioned.
Yeah, so he has, he has his own site.
Okay.
And it says works at John Silver's Insurance Services.
Okay.
So, and yeah, he's got over 2,300 friends. So he's a popular guy. His wife is a practitioner down at Agape, and she does a lot of stuff for women's empowerment and family stuff. And
so is that his Facebook page or?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. I will look for that.
Yeah. So yeah, he'd love to see that, I'm sure.
And I had kind of assumed that he had written a song based on Reverend Richard Rohr's book. That's hard to take out, Reverend Richard Rohr. But he said he hadn't. And yeah. It's a book about aging. Is that what it is?
No, Falling Upward is about the 12 steps.
Oh.
And I'm paraphrasing now because I haven't read the book in a while, but I would say that Richard Rohr would probably say the mystic tradition of the 12 steps.
Okay. The subtitle, Falling Upward, A Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life.
Yeah. Which
is why I thought it was about aging. It says to show them that those who have fallen, failed, or gone down are the only ones who understand up.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. That's like falling forward, right?
Yeah.
Or failing forward.
Yeah.
Right. So John Maxwell, I think it was last week. Right. So the important thing is to remember that, you know, I'm either up or getting up.
Right.
That's the quote of his friend, and you know, that's a great way to be. You know, even in adversity, you know, really, it doesn't matter how bad a day that you have, even if you've just found out, you know, you've got a horrible health diagnosis, and you know, somebody cleaned out your bank account, and you know, and you just and then your dog died, you know, and then your wife left you when you got home.
Sounds like a country western song.
but even within that, right, you can find a way. I'm either up or getting up.
Yeah.
So I mean, we all have times in our life where we just really get the wind knocked knocked out of us. And certainly any one of those, being sarcastic there, but any one of those situations would certainly be a gut punch without a doubt.
And in those moments, it tends to feel like it will last forever. Like you're never not.
You're going to, and to be psychologically healthy, you should feel the punch, right? And you should feel the pain and, whatever suffering is attached to it. But, the whole reason why we have a spiritual practice, in my opinion, is to help weather those life challenges, because they're just a part of life.
Yeah.
And so what we get to do in religious science then is we get to look at those and determine, okay, so which of these are kind of due to the systemic aspect of just the way the world works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I got passed over for a promotion because I'm a woman, and there was a man who got the promotion over me. Okay, so that's kind of a systemic thing. But we can't live there, because then it defines the way we show up in just all kinds of ways.
Right.
Right? So even with something is, you could apply that to all different ways of life. And I realize I'm saying this as a white male, which is is a position of privilege in that, not that white men don't work hard and don't deserve the advances that they get, but it's not, when we start, it's not really an even playing field for everyone. And I know that's really hard, particularly for white men, to understand, because they feel like it minimizes their own contribution in some way. But all it's doing is saying, you got to start from the second step of that 14-step stairway to get to the second floor. And everybody else is down 2 or 3 steps below you, right?
Yeah.
And if you happen to have an IQ of 130, right? So then you can take it a couple more steps. And if you have a high EQ, you get along well with others in an intuitive way. Just, I think of my stepson, Carl, this kid, at a young age, he just had a real aptitude for math, and it was just an incredibly likable kid. Everybody liked this guy. And, he went on to become a coach and got his degree in aeronautics. But again, just a very likable, now a young man. So some were blessed that way, right?
Yeah.
So
I saw something.
But then, he could have turned out to be a drunk and a drug addict and a wife beater and all these, and he didn't do any of that either.
Oh, good.
So, yeah. So,
I was watching a story on Father Gregory Boyle, I think is his name. He does Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, and they have been staying open during the COVID pandemic.
Pretty amazing story, that guy.
Yeah, and he was saying some beautiful stuff. I posted it to my Facebook page if anybody wants to watch it. He's a priest, I believe. He's a father. I'm not sure what denomination, but everything.
He's a Catholic priest.
Okay. Yeah, everything he was saying sounded more like the mystical and something religious scientists and we thought people could really get behind. I think he was actually, I was at a conference where he was supposed to speak, and then at the last minute he couldn't make it. But it was a New Thought conference, so he certainly is in alignment with our values. But
we've talked about this before. There is tremendous. Christianity is a mystic tradition.
Yes.
Bread becomes the body of Jesus. How much more mystical do you need to get, right? the Trinity. How much more a mystical idea? I mean, three persons in one God. I mean, how do you even access that?
But it's when you hear somebody expressing something in a way that aligns beyond what we have come to think of as a traditional or a mainstream.
Well, when you unhitch it from the salvation train, right? I just do not think that Christians are doing Jesus and the Christian movement any favors.
Well, Father Gregory Boyle, I think, is a great example of somebody who's really practicing the principles that Jesus taught of love, regardless of, and what he was talking about. I thought of this when you were saying the sort of the steps up that some people have. He was saying adverse childhood experiences, which are known as ACEs, that you can Google those. And he showed, there was a slide that he showed on this news story that show like 10 of the most common adverse childhood experiences. And he works with people who have been in gangs and maybe in prison and have come out and help them find meaning and community. And he said most of us, and he himself said he doesn't have any of those ACEs. Most people might have one or two. The people he works with have 8, 9, or 10.
Right.
So they have been either severely abused or just been exposed to really great traumatic events in their childhood, which created their responses throughout the rest of their lives. And what they're responding to is just the healing power of love and acceptance and being there for each other. So over and over again, he said, we belong to each other. We are each other's. And
yeah, well, Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest, serving 14 years in the county jail around New Mexico where he's living. He was
serving as like
a chaplain.
A chaplain, not serving prison time.
Not serving time, no.
Okay, just wanted to be clear.
Yeah. But he talks about the inmates there having a daddy hunger. That the one thing they also have in common is not having good male role models to where they're, so just, I mean, it would take a lot to go into, but I remember him talking about, daddy hunger and how younger men need the love of older men. And boy, when I read that, I thought, yeah, that is really true.
And I think part of that sense of loss for something that maybe people never had comes from the division of our families and our communities. I think when it was a time of, tribal or more closely knit communities, your father may not be available for one reason or another, but your uncles were available, or, your priest, or your teachers, or the grocer, or, you had
the neighbor guy.
Right, exactly.
I remember there was a fella who my dad was temporary duty a lot because I was in the service. And one of the local guys helped me carve a pine wood derby car.
Okay.
Right? So we all lived in these courts, and it was military housing, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up in it was a very structured environment anyway, and I'm sure it was kind of a reflection of what was going on in the country, even in civilian life, but certainly in a isolated military base, everybody's kind of looking out for each other anyway.
Yeah.
Guys were building, dune buggies, and there was the guy who made all the plywood Santa Claus stuff, and he had all these woodworking tools. And my neighbor took a Volkswagen and cut the chassis down to make get one of those fiberglass dune buggy kits. Right? I mean, these guys are doing all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
And, and then my dad was doing, in those days, you used to wrench on your own cars, and being the oldest, I was usually out there, with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad could be a very impatient guy and even a rager, which, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but unless you were working on an engine or working in a car.
Okay.
Right? Well, I would get frustrated and, I have literally, trying to line up the head, the head is a heavy part that goes on the engine block that has the valves and all this other stuff. And I remember being in my 20s and getting so aggravated trying to line up all these things that I just threw it out in the street, right? Which is really stupid because then I had to go get the head reground. But, my dad, it's okay, so let's figure out what we know. Okay, and, so if it's not fitting, well, it's supposed to fit. So there's something in the way. So let's just back it out and see. Maybe there's a little alignment pin that we haven't seen. Oh, sure enough, right?
It's like he was confident and calm because he knew what engines were supposed to be and how to fix it. So it's often when we're in situations that we are unfamiliar with and don't know how to fix, that we lose our patience or our temper when we're trying to make something fit the way we think.
Or, trying to get 5 or 6 knucklehead sons to do yard work without screwing off all morning. Watch you poke something with a broom. And, where if you just got with it and stopped screwing around with it, you'd be done in 10 minutes. And instead, it's an hour of,
So much of who we each are is based on our experience growing up. I mean, that's just how humans happen. And so it's, go ahead.
Nature, nurture.
That's right.
Right.
So to step beyond what we've been taught or shown and try something new that really is stepping out of our comfort zone, or to even be interested in things that haven't been in our sort of surroundings as we grew up. Most people don't do that. Most people stick with what they know and what they've been shown and taught.
Right.
So,
especially when you get to a certain age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things they have found in people when studying their political beliefs is that most people form their political mindset in their early 20s, usually when they're in college, and then never change.
Yeah.
Because there's a tendency to gather evidence to support the conclusion that you've already have, right? So it's confirmation bias is what they call it today.
Yeah.
But boy, you can see how that could work in all kinds of ways, which is a great thing about religious science, and and Buddhism, of course, gets you to start looking at what you're thinking. But in the Western world, religious science, science of mind, is really looking at what is it you're thinking about? How are you thinking about it? Is it serving you? If it's not serving you, what's a new thought, right? That can not only shift and lift the tendency of our thinking to that which you want, but to this point of this week's talk was, what is it that's going to bring that fire in the belly? What's going to quicken us to be excited about life and to stay on that upward spiral. So even if it's no matter, how steep or how narrow the climb, but to make sure that there is a climb. Right?
It reminds me of a line from the musical Hamilton, which I've been obsessing over recently for some reason. Oh, I know why. Because the YouTube series Some Good News with John Krasinski, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it. They're on episode 5 now. He plays Jack Ryan on an Amazon series, but he's best known
Oh, yes.
for The
With the little
Office.
kid.
Jack Ryan?
Yeah, the dude who played Krasinski or whatever his name is, Krakatowi or.
Krasinski, yeah, he was on The Office he had like a flippy hairdo.
Yeah.
So he decided to just do a YouTube series about good news, but because he has connections in the industry and he's married to Emily Blunt, the actress,
Yeah.
he's been able to put together some really cool shows. So he gathers stuff on YouTube from around the country. And one little girl had missed the shutdown happened during the time she had tickets to go see Hamilton, I think, for her birthday. And so he contacted her and said, and she was probably, I don't know, 9, something like that, 10, said that he got her tickets for when theaters open again. But
and knew the show.
Huh?
9 years old and knew the show.
Yeah, she had all the songs memorized. Yeah. And he said, in the meantime, here's my friend Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote and played Alexander Hamilton in the play. And then he started singing, and then all the cast members were on screen and, the Zoom boxes, and they did a song from Hamilton. I'm getting chills thinking about it, but it was so moving. And I've seen 4 of the 5 episodes of Some Good News, SGN. And I cry every time, just happy tears, because it's also like wonderful. Everybody's so giving, and they're wonderful. So because of that, I started thinking about the musical again and Googling it and watching things. And they performed at the White House during the Obama administration, and Obama, Michelle, and Barack did an introduction when it was nominated for a Tony Award. I mean, it got me very emotional about my political beliefs, and when I felt happier and more in alignment with who was in the White House and how I thought I wanted it to go. And there's a line from Hamilton that young, scrappy, and hungry, I think it is. So that goes back to badagini and the meaning of hungry as fire in the belly. So, Google some Hamilton. But
they may have changed that kid's life.
Yeah, she was like this the whole time and tearing, and you could see her looking at her parent, her, mom or dad off screen, like, oh my gosh.
Well, and then technologically, the way they pulled that off.
Yeah.
Right? Because, of course, this is low-end Zoom here, but only one of us can talk. As soon as one of us starts, we can't talk over each other.
Right.
Because it's buffers or whatever. And here they were singing all their various parts.
In sync, perfect sync.
It was amazing. And how delightful to see Emily hop on camera.
Yeah.
And they're kind of bantering back and forth about,
which is more
Mary Poppins. Or, it was very cute.
Yeah, the whole series is, I'm looking forward, episode 5 is out.
So now is this on Netflix then?
It's on YouTube.
YouTube,
yeah.
Right. I'll look for it.
Yeah, Some Good News. So the other thing that I thought of when we were talking about how our beliefs, we choose our political affiliation and we stick. I found out about an organization called Changing the Conversation, and I think they're based out of New York. And they're training people to go out and speak with swing voters, because those are the ones who you might be able to change their mind one direction or another. But their technique is to really listen to what the person is saying and to share something personal from your experience of why you believe what you believe or what questions you have. And it's like active listening. And they have a whole training program. And of course, now with the pandemic, you can't go like door to door and talk to people, which is how they were encouraging that it be done. But you can Google Changing the Conversation.
Troll them on Facebook.
I think they were talking about making phone calls.
Yeah.
Which
you could, right? So you find, just search, and you can find whoever, which side of the gate you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can find folks like that and just send them a message. Hey,
True.
I'd like to have a real conversation about, I think differently than you do. Would you be interested?
It is a hard thing to do.
It is different though, right? Because,
Mhm.
well, I suppose if you did it through Facebook, you could, do it through Messenger and you would see each other, right? So that you could at least, because so much miscommunication
Yeah.
can happen, or I should say errors in communication can happen when you can't see someone's
Yeah, because most
body language.
communication is facial expression and body language. So
Right, and that, you can sarcastically talk about, injecting disinfectant, and then everybody just blows everything out of, they just blow it all out of the water and just don't understand what he was really saying there. So,
but you wouldn't say any of that sarcastically, would you? Never sarcastic.
but then, I guess I really don't recognize sarcasm because I didn't see any there.
Right.
So, anyway, so I don't know how we're doing for time. Is there anything else we want to say about?
About fire in the belly?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good time for all of us to reevaluate what does give us enough fire in the belly, that we find ways to do the things that call to us, even with the interesting restrictions and challenges of the days of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And try to stretch that comfort zone a little, look into learning or trying something. My brother just told me he signed up for those master class.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you can do something like that, and I'm gonna hop onto his computer and take some master classes myself, because
How much are they? I'm just curious.
he said they weren't like
They weren't
so terribly expensive. Like he got all of them. He signed up for all of them, and he said, he's paid more for.
The only one of those that looked interesting to me, oddly enough, because I do not have a theater background at all, and it's not anything that's really interested me.
Mm-hmm.
But Helen Mirren does one on acting.
Yeah.
And so because I've been watching her, back in the days when she was on the BBC as the inspector. I forget what it was, but anyway, it would be, it's always interesting to get a kind of behind the scenes look at how people do their craft.
Right.
Like whether it's, someone who's acting or, a pizza chef or, whatever.
Yeah, they have Neil Gaiman, who's a writer who's created everything from comic books to films. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is, I don't know, cosmologist. Is that his?
Oh yeah, no, he's big.
Yeah.
Neil Diamond, huh? That would be interesting too, because he's written so many hit songs, and most people probably don't know that he wrote them. Right, like I was a Monkees fan when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
Right, so The Last Train to Clarksville, do you remember that song?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote that.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna Google that right now.
I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. That was Neil Diamond.
Oh yeah, no, I said Neil Gaiman, which might be pronounced Gaiman, Gaiman.
Oh.
He wrote a series that's been on Amazon streaming called Good Omens. He wrote the film Coraline. It's an animated thing about the movie Stardust.
Well, that actually makes more sense because as I'm telling you all that stuff, I'm thinking, shit, he must be 80 years old by now.
Neil Diamond, yeah, I think he is.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
What were you thinking when you wrote Sweet Caroline? Who?
No, just because you're 80 doesn't mean you act like that.
Did he play for the Dodgers?
I saw a YouTube video of Neil Sedaka.
Oh yeah.
doing some of his hits to, you know, cheer people up at the beginning of the lockdown. And he's still, you know, playing the piano and
I'm sure.
singing, and, you know, so I'm sure
Yeah.
Neil Diamond is as well.
He was probably a saloon singer in his last life. Right?
What are you clicking on? I can hear you clicking.
Oh, I'm just
Ah, the pen.
sorry. I
That's okay.
should have muted my thumb.
So, do you have any closing thoughts for our digressions around having a fire in your belly?
Well, maybe let's see what else was on this.
You had a slide from Sonia Choquette, didn't you? Let's see if
Yes. How do you say your name?
I said Choquette. I don't know if that's correct. Let's see if I can find it.
Whoops, I did that incorrectly, did I? No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's closer to the end, I think.
The 5 pillars.
That's
So this is like I think a 13th century print. And you can look all this stuff up on Metropolitan Museum.com, I think it is, or museum, metmuseum.com. There it is.
I know in Islam, you're not supposed to try to put a human face on God, or even recreate what the prophet looked like. So that's why their art is patterns and calligraphy. Because they're trying to find another way to express the inexpressible.
Well, it's very mandala-like too. So, I mean, if you look at this, wouldn't this make an amazing quilt?
Yeah.
I mean, it pulls you. So it's one of those optical illusions that can either pull you in or feel like it's coming at you.
And you know, mathematics was something that the Arabs anyway excelled at. That's why we have Arabic numerals. We're still using that.
Well, they invented zero as a placeholder.
So those mandalas are very mathematical and patterns, you know.
Right.
So there's the slide I was thinking of.
Yeah. You must not define yourself by experiences or conditions, for while these are tools you can use, they are not who you are. You are spirit, a fiery, heavenly intelligence, created by God and unlimited in nature.
There you go. Soul lessons and soul purpose.
So what else? Oh, the only reason man is limited is that he has not allowed the divine within him to more completely express. Did I even get to that yesterday? I don't know that I did.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. Well,
this is really true. If we could stand aside and let this one perfect life flow through us, we could not help healing people. And then I added on there, and ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this new thought teaching is a healing philosophy.
Right.
So we're healing aspects of mind that continue to distract and fool us into thinking that we are separate from the divine.
Yeah.
And that's what all these obstacles are, whether the obstacles are actual things that are kind of thrown in the way for us to contend with, or an attachment that we have, or a grasping, a fear of losing,
right,
not having enough, whatever it is. So anyway.
So we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for anyone who joined us on this. Yes. If anybody could see us, we tried to do it live to YouTube and Facebook. Don't know if it worked. We'll find out later.
Well, right now, I know for sure Reverend Jessica likes it because she's always promoting it to the practitioner corps.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Reverend Jessica.
And she actually likes our little diversions because, you know.
That's what the show's about. So we're doing a good job.
Apparently. Yeah.
So,
it was definitely a much different show when we were both in the same room.
It was or it wasn't?
It was.
Okay.
Right? Because, you know, I would see you sometimes jotting down notes or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Looking up stuff on our phones, respectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're, you know, I think we're doing an okay job with this version as well.
Oh, yeah. You know, the one thing I meant to ask you about, because I didn't get a chance to see it, you did a Flrysh episode.
I did, yes.
So you need to give yourself a little plug just in case anyone's still listening.
Okay, on the CSLGH YouTube channel, there is a playlist for Flrysh. You might be able to see it in the recently uploaded section as well. So it was for Earth Day week, so Earth Week, because the juxtaposition of Earth Day and Ramadan, I found a way to connect it. So in addition to doing a little bit in my front yard, doing a little video in my backyard, and promoting some of the vegetables I got from Aaron Riley at Gardens Landscaping.
How is Aaron? Aaron's doing well?
Yeah, she was. Last time I checked on her, I'm sure she still is.
Good.
And I found, there's some video of guppies, as we've been talking about my dad and his guppy breeding.
The mosquito eaters.
Got some little guppy vids in there, and tied it to choices we can make when making masks, or, you know, choosing what we wear gardening or whatever, and how to keep plastic from our oceans. I mean, it's a pretty jam-packed little 10-minute episode. So.
All right, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah. And Thoughts on Talks is now in podcast format as well. So if anybody is interested in listening to us, you know, in addition to watching us, I don't want to say instead, or if you know anybody who, you know, loves podcasts, it's now available on Spotify and Pod Chasers and Spreaker, and I'm waiting for a few more, but several podcast outlets, so you could probably just do a search.
Cool.
And yeah, find us just in audio.
When we get our new website up, you can access it there. There'll be a link.
Yes, and a player. I put it up in there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
well, cool.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening and watching, and check in next week for more Thoughts on Talks.
Very good. Stay safe at home, everyone. We just have a little bit longer to go, maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
All right.
Yeah, okay, so
stop recording first.
I'm going to.
You could do the stop recording smile.